Imagine waking up one day to discover your peaceful city transformed into a chilling tableau from a horror film. Visualize Prague, Europe's heart, a city famed for its calm and welcoming ambience. A city that attracts globetrotters, eager to uncover its profound history and cultural marvels. However, on one spine-chilling day, the calm of this city was destroyed. On that ill-fated day, the unimaginable occurred. A student, merely 24 years old, transmuted his university into a war zone. This serene city, notable for its strict firearm laws, suddenly became the focal point of the Czech Republic's most horrific shooting. The carnage left 14 people lifeless and 25 others injured, morphing an education hub into an arena of unspeakable terror. That fateful day, Prague's tranquility was shattered and the world's naivety was lost. Every terrifying act has a face behind it. This is the story of a 24-year-old scholar whose unexpected metamorphosis from a high-achieving student to a mass murderer left everyone in shock. As a student at Charles University in Prague, one of the world's oldest and most distinguished educational institutions, he was renowned for intellectual prowess. Wearing the mask of an ordinary student, he was navigating his way through the challenges of university life, all the while harboring a chilling secret. This intellect, supposed to be engrossed in textbooks and lectures, was in reality shielding a deadly cache of legally acquired weapons. However, his spiral into violence didn't commence at the university. Prior to the mass shooting, he committed an unthinkable act of patricide, directing his weapon towards his own father. The motivations driving this first act of violence, as well as those that pushed him to unleash the horrifying attack at the university, remain shrouded in mystery. The strict gun law-abiding Czech Republic, where gun crime is rare, left in shock. The uncovering of the shooter's considerable arsenal served as a grim reminder of the lurking potential for tragedy in the most unexpected corners. This promising scholar's transformation into a nightmare has left a trail of unanswered questions. The 20 minutes that rocked Prague and the world. When the clock struck 12 on that tragic day, a student at Charles University in Prague set off a storm of bullets on his unsuspecting classmates. The peaceful university setting was brutally warped into a stage of fear and anarchy. This seemingly ordinary student's barrage of bullets, fired from a legally acquired firearm, resulted in a devastating loss of 14 lives. Among the victims were locals and internationals, faculty members and students, the young and the aged. These bullets mercilessly shattered dreams, stole futures and broke hearts. Despite the quick response of emergency services, for many it was too late. The lives that were lost could not be retrieved. The shooter's reign of terror might have come to a halt, but the aftershocks of his actions will reverberate for years to come. The tragic news shook the Czech Republic, a nation celebrated for its strict gun control and low crime rate. This was a catastrophe of unmatched scale, a day that will forever a scar in the nation's history. The aftermath painted a grim picture. The university, renowned for its academic achievements, was now a crime scene. The hallways which once buzzed with laughter and knowledge were now eerily silent, haunted by the memory of the tragic incident. In less than half an hour, lives were lost, dreams were destroyed, and a city was scarred perpetually. The long-lasting impact of this horrific event still haunts the city and its inhabitants. As the dust settled, the enormity of the horror came into sharp focus. A deathly stillness descended upon Prague as the city and the nation grappled with the inconceivable. A typical day had culminated in a massacre, leaving a path of bereavement and shock. The Czech Republic, renowned for its stringent firearm regulations and low crime rates, was rocked to its core, leading to the announcement of a national day of mourning. A solemn day characterized by weeping and silence, acknowledging the loss of 15 blameless lives. Flags hung at half-mast, the atmosphere heavy with a grief so profound that words fell short of encapsulating it. But it wasn't just the Czech Republic in mourning. The calamity at Charles University resonated globally. Dignitaries, stretching from the White House to European leaders, expressed their sympathy. Vocalizations of support and unity flooded in, underscoring the worldwide community's collective mourning over such mindless aggression. The shockwave of the event was exacerbated by the revelation that the shooter, a 24-year-old student, was a lawful firearm owner with a considerable stockpile of weapons. Amid the grief and incredulity, queries began to surface. How did he gather such an arsenal? What fueled his decision to carry out such a vile act? The probe into these queries and the shooter's potential associations with other recent fatalities is in its early stages. However, as the investigation progresses, the focus is resolutely on the victims and their kin. The surge of grief and mourning has been overwhelming, but does little to alleviate the emptiness engendered by this terrible incident. The lives lost, the dreams shattered, the futures abruptly ended. The true toll of this catastrophe is unfathomable. The reverberation of the gunshots may have subsided, yet the agony and the questions persist. In the fallout of the disaster, the city of Prague, the Czech Republic, and indeed the world are left wrestling with the brutal reality of this mindless act of violence. A brutal reminder that even in the most tranquil corners of the world, no place is safe from such atrocities. What lessons can we glean from such a horrific tragedy? In the aftermath of the terror that took place at Charles University in Prague, we're forced to confront a chilling reality. Mere gun control laws may not be enough to prevent such devastating incidents. The Czech Republic, known for its stringent regulations, was rocked to its core, compelling us to reassess our own policies. The incident has sent shockwaves through the international education community. Universities, the nurturing grounds for minds and forgers of futures, are now looked upon with apprehension. Safety in these institutions, once assumed, has become a pressing topic of discussion. This event starkly reminded us that bolstering security in our educational institutions merits urgent consideration, not just in the Czech Republic, but across the world. Beyond gun control and security considerations, it's also crucial to focus on the mental health aspect. The shooter, an accomplished student with a clean record, executed an act as bewildering as it was heartbreaking. His actions underscore the urgent need for increased mental health awareness and robust support systems in our societies. It's crucial that those grappling with mental issues receive the necessary aid before they reach a crisis point. In the wake of such a dreadful event, it's natural to feel daunted. But we must remember the power of resilience and the potential for change. This tragedy should not immobilize us, but instead it should galvanize us into action. We must endeavour to learn from this, to evolve, and above all, to ensure that such a tragedy never recurs. In the face of such adversity, we must discover the strength to find the light, to learn, to evolve, and crucially, to ensure that such a tragedy never recurs.
Have you ever pondered what propels an individual to execute the unimaginable? What sparks a seemingly average person to morph into a mass executioner? Now join us on a chilling journey back to May 12, 1987, to the tranquil hamlet of Bogaerden, Belgium. It was here that a nondescript man, Michel van Wijnendael, made a horrifying transition from ordinary to monstrous. Equipped with a .22 caliber rifle, Van Wijnendael breached the calm environment of a rural farmhouse, a place that should have epitomized safety. But on that fateful day, it converted into a stage for a ghastly catastrophe. Van Wijnendael, in a bone-chilling act of violence, relentlessly butchered numerous family members. The casualties of his monstrous act spread across generations, a stark reminder of the indiscriminate brutality of his onslaught. The horrific reverberations of the gunshots echoed through the serene countryside, signifying the horrific end of 7 innocent lives. But the terror didn't cease there. Following his atrocious act, Van Wijnendael absconded the murder scene, instigating a frantic car chase. The local law enforcement, alerted to this heinous act of violence, were zealously pursuing him, their sirens disrupting the otherwise peaceful Belgian countryside. The pursuit concluded in the small town of Sirault, near Mons. Cornered and with no escape routes, Van Wijnendael made his ultimate, sorrowful decision. In a somber turn of events, he directed his weapon towards himself, ending his own life, and leaving behind a string of unanswered questions. Within a span of few hours, a serene Belgian hamlet was transfigured into a scene of unthinkable horror. A society left to grapple with the shock and sorrow of a crime that would be etched into their shared memory forever. In a blink, 7 lives were ruthlessly snuffed out, leaving a community in shock and sorrow. Visualize being a law enforcement officer on the hunt for a merciless murderer. Time is of the essence, and every moment is crucial. In the chilling aftermath of an unthinkable crime, the local police found themselves in a high-stakes race against the clock. Michel van Wijnendael, a man who once led an ordinary life, had shockingly transformed into a mass killer, leaving behind an unsettling path of turmoil and fear. Now, The peaceful nation of Belgium was the setting for an intense and high-stakes manhunt. Van Wijnendale vanished from the crime scene, leaving behind a terrifying tableau of devastation. His victims, a child and 5 members of a single family, had their lives tragically cut short in his sudden and brutal rampage. Faced with the enormity of the crime, the local police recognized the urgency to act immediately in order to avoid further tragedy. The pursuit of Van Wijnendale was a relentless and high-pressure operation. Roadblocks were swiftly established, and a sweeping dragnet was launched, but the merciless murderer slipped through the initial barricades. Every passing moment brought with it the risk of more innocent lives being lost. In a surprising turn of events, Van Wijnendale's own relatives became key players in the manhunt. They pinpointed him at a location separate from the initial crime scene, providing the breakthrough the police so desperately needed. The law enforcement officers were closing in with renewed resolve as the noose started to tighten around the fugitive. The pursuit led them to Cireux, near Mons, the setting for the final act of this horrifying drama. Surrounded and without any alternatives, Van Wijnendale found himself at a dead end. But instead of submitting to justice, he decided to author his final chapter. Trapped and devoid of alternatives, Van Wijnendale ended his life, leaving a trail of unresolved mysteries. When the turmoil subsides, what's left? A shattered community, lives irrevocably changed, and a chilling question: why? This segment delves into the aftermath of the horrific events in a quiet Belgian town. The boom of gunshots, once so glaringly discordant, had subsided into an unsettling quiet. But this silence didn't bring solace. It was merely a harsh reminder of the voices that had been abruptly extinguished, the laughter and chats that would no longer resonate in the air. The victims' families were plunged into a nightmare, a reality where their loved ones were suddenly, cruelly gone. The farmhouse, once a sign of familial warmth and togetherness, now stood as a grim monument to the lives taken. The effect went beyond the immediate victims, permeating the hearts of the community, the shockwaves of their loss deeply felt. The question that lingered oppressively was, why? Why did Michel Van Wijnendale, a member of their community, wreak such havoc? The law enforcement, after extensive investigations, could only label him as potentially mentally unstable. Yet, this explanation seemed inadequate, a weak attempt to rationalize the irrational. The enigma surrounding Van Wijnendale's motives added more complexity to the aftermath. It was a question that would perhaps always remain unanswered, a puzzle piece forever absent from the jigsaw of reality. The piece of understanding why something occurred was elusive. Despite their scars, the community showed resilience in adversity. They grieved, they memorialized, and they undertook the laborious task of rebuilding their lives. However, the echoes of that dreadful day in May remained, a constant reminder of the disaster that had struck them. The wounds may heal, but the scars persist. The memories of that dreadful day in May continue to haunt, a chilling reminder of the darkness that resided within Michel Van Wijnendale. Is this a standalone incident or a sign of a larger issue? Let's examine the situation beyond Belgium's borders. Unraveling the deeper layers of this darkness, we uncover that Michel Van Wijnendale's dreadful act was not a one-off event. During the time span of 36 years, from 1987 to 2023, Europe was convulsed by a sequence of mass shootings that cast a grim shadow of dread and grief over the continent. These were not just numbers on a page. They represented mothers, fathers, children, friends, and neighbors whose lives were swiftly and brutally extinguished. The perpetrators, such as Michael Ryan, Anders Behring Breivik, and others, who committed their horrifying acts in nations like Great Britain, France, Germany, Finland, Norway, Slovakia, Netherlands, and Serbia, are names that resonate with notoriety. They didn't limit their violence to individuals. Their crimes targeted the very core of communities, schools, and public places, leaving a path of destruction in their wake. Each gunshot, every life robbed, sent tremors through societies, tearing into the fabric of daily existence and leaving wounds that might never fully mend. The reverberations of gun violence extend beyond the immediate sufferers. It shatters families, communities, and leaves an indelible mark on nations. These incidents, scattered across time and geography, expose the sinister underbelly of our societies. They reveal the catastrophic aftermath of untreated mental health conditions and the perils of unsupervised access to firearms. Each heartbreaking incident stands as a chilling testament to the necessity of addressing these vital issues. Yet, among the gloom, a hint of hope exists. These calamities have ignited dialogues and efforts around mental health and gun control. They have led to an increasing awareness of the necessity for comprehensive strategies to avert such occurrences and to assist those impacted by them. These incidents serve as a stark reminder of the pressing need for addressing mental health issues and implementing gun control measures. So, what insights can we glean from these horrifying events? The shocking narrative of Michelle van Wijnendale, an individual who inflicted immeasurable pain and chaos, has provided us with significant understanding. It has brought into focus how a single person, possibly battling with mental instability, can cause devastation across generations, families, and entire communities. This offense, along with numerous others of its kind throughout Europe, emphasizes the shattering effects of gun violence on our society. It's a stark wake-up call that we need to escalate our efforts to boost awareness and take decisive action against such atrocious deeds. However, this isn't solely about controlling firearms, it's about mental health. We must aspire to enhance our comprehension and assistance for those grappling with mental health issues to avert such calamities. The value of watchfulness and community spirit is paramount. It's these connections that can help us spot potential dangers and shield us from those with harmful intentions. As we commemorate the lives lost, we must also work towards a future where such thoughtless violence is a relic of the past. This is a crucial discourse that we are obliged to engage in for ourselves and in the honor of those whose lives were tragically shortened. August 19th, 1987, a date that would be indelibly imprinted in British history. The day dawned like any other, but beneath the mundane was a sinister plot devised by a 27-year-old man named Michael Ryan. The first act of his plan was the ambush of Susan Godfrey amidst the serenity of Savernake Forest, where she was out picnicking with her children. This dreadful act marked the beginning of Ryan's onslaught. His terror escalated, leading him home where he tragically shot his own mother and set his house on fire. That blaze acted like a beacon, luring the unsuspecting neighbors towards a deadly snare. Armed with a legal collection of handguns and semi-automatic rifles, Ryan plunged the town into chaos. He showed no mercy, even to an off-duty unarmed police officer, PC Trevor Wainwright, who had no idea of the horror that had broken out in his peaceful town. Wainwright's father wasn't spared either. He fell victim to Ryan's shooting spree. As the hours ticked by, Ryan continued his rampage, each gunshot magnifying the horror of the day. 16 lives were extinguished and 15 others were left wounded, with their lives forever scarred by the day's events. Ryan's killing spree came to an end when he holed up in a local school and took his own life. In just a few hours, Ryan had transformed the tranquil town of Hungerford into a landscape of unimaginable terror. Who was the architect of this nightmare? Michael Ryan, a 27-year-old inhabitant of Hungerford. Unassuming on the surface, Ryan was just like any other citizen of Hungerford. But beneath the mask, a dark and twisted personality lurked. His past, although seemingly normal, was marked by stalking, an alarming behavior that pointed towards his malevolent nature. His routine visits to Savernake Forest weren't for typical outdoor activities. Rather, they were driven by a sinister motive that would later unfold in the most shocking way. The more disturbing part of this narrative is the fact that Ryan was a licensed gun owner. He possessed handguns and semi-automatic rifles, the very firearms he would subsequently employ in his murderous rampage. The contradiction is severe and unnerving. Ryan, the man accountable for one of the most lethal firearms occurrences in British history, was not a criminal in the eyes of the law. He was a man who had skillfully worked his way through the system and exercised his right to bear arms, a right he would grossly abuse. However, the most terrifying element of this saga is that Ryan was not an outsider. He wasn't a nameless antagonist who had penetrated the town to cause chaos. He was a resident, a neighbor, and a known individual. His actions that day were not those of a stranger, but rather, they were the actions of one of their own. Ryan was no alien to the town or its residents. He belonged to them, a reality that adds an extra layer to the horror. The massacre inflicted a profound wound on the town of Hungerford and the entire nation. It was a wound that penetrated deep, causing shockwaves of unimaginable fear to ripple through the peaceful town of Hungerford. The town's tranquility was abruptly disrupted by the unthinkable terror, an act of violence committed by a single man, Michael Ryan. 27 years old and wielding his legally owned firearms with deadly accuracy, Ryan's rampage ended in a catastrophic toll of 16 dead, many more injured, and countless lives irrevocably damaged. The devastating spree of violence did not cease until Ryan himself cut it short, taking his own life and leaving a wake of questions and a community steeped in grief. Among the victims were the parents of Police Constable Trevor Wainwright, who was off duty that day. Unaware of the horrors unfolding around him, a typical day turned into a living nightmare for not just Wainwright, but the entire town. The profound wound of this massacre was not merely one of grief and loss, but one that also highlighted the resilience of a community united. Amid the unspeakable catastrophe, the town of Hungerford began to mend, with neighbors supporting one another, strangers offering solace, and the town attempting to restore what was lost. The massacre was a terrible event that not only shattered lives, but also an event that underscored the formidable strength of the human spirit. As Hungerford embarked on its journey towards healing, the nation watched, mourned, and vowed to prevent such a disaster from recurring. The day concluded as it had begun in silence, but it was a silence permeated with sorrow, loss, and a sense of incredulity. The Hungerford Massacre served as a stark alarm for the government, jolting the nation and prompting significant transformations. The massacre was not merely an act of unjustifiable violence. It served as a catalyst, igniting a crucial debate about gun control in the United Kingdom. Prompted by this heartbreaking event, the British government enacted the Firearms Amendment Act of 1988, an essential law that reinforced gun control regulations. The act was a significant stride, enforcing stricter rules for owning and using firearms, specifically semi-automatic rifles and handguns, the same choice of weapons Michael Ryan had tragically used in August 1987. This move was a decisive message to the citizenry that the government was committed to preventing such a calamity from occurring again. However, the act did more than just modify the laws. It precipitated a cultural shift in perspectives towards gun ownership. Before the Hungerford Massacre, guns were often viewed as sporting tools or means of self-defense. However, the massacre revealed a grim reality. Guns could also be tools of terror when the wrong person wields them. This revelation triggered a wariness towards gun ownership amongst the public, inciting a cultural shift that endures till this day. This change in attitude pervaded all tiers of society, from government corridors to the streets of Hungerford, and altered the way people viewed guns and their role in society. The Hungerford Massacre transformed Britain. It cast a glaring light on the perils of gun ownership and instigated more stringent laws, considerably reducing the likelihood of such a disaster recurring. While the Hungerford Massacre was a sorrowful incident, it also served as a turning point in the history of gun control in the United Kingdom, highlighting the potential for tragedy to bring about impactful change. Over 3 decades have elapsed since that tragic day. The Hungerford Massacre, a sorrowful incident that jolted an entire country, has left an unerasable imprint. Its repercussions were felt not just in the tranquil town of Hungerford, but reverberated throughout British society. Suddenly, Hungerford, once admired for its calm rural appeal, found itself at the crux of a national discourse on gun control. As a consequence, the tragic event instigated legislative amendments, leading to the prohibition of specific types of firearms in the UK. While the town has managed to march ahead, the memories persist, resonating within those affected. Over the passage of time, Hungerford has exhibited resilience and communal strength, demonstrating the capacity of a community to recover, reconstruct, and fortify in the wake of a devastating event. But as the town progresses, it bears the weight of that day's legacy, a touching reminder of the lives ceased and the innocence disturbed. The Hungerford Massacre stands as a grim reminder of the havoc that one individual can inflict. It is a segment of British history that will forever remain etched in our minds.
Envision a serene French hamlet, an average day of peace and tranquility disrupted in a heartbeat. Luxiol, a picturesque region cradled in France's heart, is where this tale unfolds. The rhythm of life here is unhurried and mellow, dictated by the rotation of seasons, the morning fog lifting off the meadows, and the welcoming radiance of the town's boulangerie. But underneath this guise of serenity, a tempest was gathering, a torrent that would etch the name of Luxiol indelibly into the chronicles of French history. The signal of this impending disaster was Christian Dornier, a 31-year-old tiller of the land. To a passing observer, Dornier was just one more humble farmer, his existence as ordinary as the undulating landscape encircling the hamlet. However, Dornier's exterior masked an inner chaos as unpredictable as it was unseen. The magnitude of the impending disaster was beyond anyone's prediction. No one could have foreseen that this seemingly commonplace farmer would soon morph into the mastermind of a horror that would leave Luxiol and all of France staggering in disbelief. The day was July 12, 1989. The morning sun sketched extended shadows across the township, and the air was imbued with the aroma of freshly baked bread and blossoming flora. But as the day advanced, Luxiol's idyllic peace was disrupted, its calm replaced with a chilling silence reverberating with the atrocities of what had occurred. In a split second, Luxiol was poised to become the stage for France's most horrific peacetime massacre. Dornier's day commenced like any other, but was destined for a terrifying twist. On the doomed day, the serenity of the French countryside was ravaged as Christian Dornier, an unexceptional farmer, succumbed to a bout of insanity. A scenario of unimaginable terror unraveled in the confines of his ancestral dwelling. In an incomprehensible act of aggression, Dornier initiated his violent spree on his own kin. His mother and sister, hapless victims of his unanticipated outrage, met a tragic and untimely demise. Dornier's father, too, didn't escape his wrath, enduring injuries inflicted by his own flesh and blood. Yet the horror was far over. Dornier, in his unhinged state, was merely setting the stage. Vacating the grisly site of his family home, he then targeted the oblivious villagers. The community, formerly a sanctuary of peace, morphed into a horrifying backdrop for Dornier's merciless onslaught. Acquaintances, comrades, casual strollers, none were spared. The terror permeated as Dornier traversed the villages, discharging his firearm indiscriminately. Innocents, including the young ones, found themselves in his lethal crosshairs, their existence irrevocably shattered in a heartbeat. The magnitude of the calamity was staggering. The erstwhile idyllic villages metamorphosed into epicenters of disorder and chaos, their tranquility supplanted by the reverberating gunfire and the astonished wails of the community. During his bout of lunacy, Dornier transmuted his serene township into a scene of unimaginable dread. What began as a mundane day had transformed into a terrifying nightmare, one that the denizens of Luxiol would etch in their memories forever. The reign of terror had commenced, leaving a permanent scar on the community, irreversibly altering their perception of their world and of each other. In a bout of insanity, Dornier was transforming his once peaceful community into a scene of chaos and panic. As fear permeated, the inhabitants of Luxiol could only yearn for a cessation to the nightmare. Amid the uproar, local law enforcement emerged as heroes. Responding to the horrific emergency calls, they arrived at the tumultuous scene, armed and prepared to face the unimaginable. The serene and bucolic region of Luxiol had morphed into a war zone, with a sole gunman plowing through the villages, discharging his weapon at unsuspecting bystanders. The police, harnessing their bravery, engaged in two gun battles with Dornier. The once peaceful region resounded with the deafening sound of gunfire, each shot a stark reminder of the menace that hung over the villagers. Dornier, who had been spreading chaos with apparent impunity, eventually met his match. Despite the perils, the police stood firm, resolved to safeguard the people they had vowed to serve and protect. The apprehension of Dornier was a colossal undertaking. At 31, this farmer was not merely armed, but was also consumed by insanity, rendering him an unpredictable and formidable foe. Against such an adversary, the courage of the police stood out. Their tireless pursuit, their refusal to retreat, culminated in Dornier's apprehension. As the news of Dornier's capture disseminated, a communal sigh of relief wafted through the villages. The nightmare had ceased. The streets that had been engulfed with dread and uncertainty were now infused with a sense of reprieve. The villagers, who had been living in the terror's shadow, could finally exhale a sigh of relief. The man who had disrupted their peaceful lives was finally in custody. Dornier's reign of terror had ceased, but the wounds he left behind were far from healed. The events of that day would cast a lasting shadow on the villagers, a chilling reminder of the day their peaceful existence was shattered. But for now, the immediate threat was eliminated. With Dornier's capture, the villagers could commence the arduous path towards healing and recovery. With the turmoil subsided, Luxiol was left to grieve and to ponder. The aftermath of the savage spree was a time of intense sorrow and bewilderment for Luxiol, a village once known for its serene, pastoral allure now enshrouded in heartache and incredulity. 14 precious lives, including those of children, a teacher, and a veterinary surgeon, were abruptly taken, leaving an indelible scar in the heart of the village. The communal mourning process was deeply felt, their shared grief echoing through the tranquil streets during funeral services. A traditional merriment of Bastille Day was set aside, replaced by a reflective silence as the village paid homage to their lost kin. The immense gravity of the tragedy even reached the nation's highest office, as President François Mitterrand expressed his sympathy, a gesture that underscored the profound impact the horrifying incident had across France. Alongside the grieving, the gears of justice began to move. Christian Dornier, the man at the center of this unimaginable tragedy, faced charges of 14 counts of murder and 8 of attempted murder. Despite a mental diagnosis, he was deemed fit for incarceration near Paris. The subsequent legal proceedings sparked a broader discourse about firearm regulations in France, illuminating the urgent need for enhanced measures to prevent such an event from recurring. Yet even amidst these pressing discussions, answers seemed as elusive as the reasoning behind Dornier's violent spree. In the face of such pointless violence, Luxiol was united in grief, but divided in understanding. Dornier's crime was not merely a calamity for Luxiol, but a jolt to the entire country. This incident, the most devastating in France since 1978, caused effects that extended beyond the picturesque settings of eastern French hamlets. It ignited national debates, introspective discussions that delved into some of the current pressing subjects. France's stringent firearm regulations were questioned. How was it possible for Dornier, an agriculturist struggling with severe anxiety, to gain access to a gun? This event became a reference point in the ongoing dialogue around firearm control, prompting queries regarding the efficacy of rules and the necessity for stronger safeguards. But the Dornier matter was about more than just firearm control. It underscored the often neglected aspect of mental health and its involvement in such disasters. Diagnosed with schizophrenia, Dornier's deeds were his silent plea for assistance that fell on deaf ears. His narrative raised the question, how can we better tackle mental health issues to avert such catastrophes? The controversy over Dornier's liability was another contentious matter. Judged as not responsible under French law due to his mental state, there were demands for his presence in a criminal court. However, the law remained unwavering, sparking demonstrations by locals who felt justice was denied. Amid these debates, one point was certain: the urgency for increased vigilance, empathy, and action. Whether it was tightening firearm laws, investing more in mental health services, or reconsidering our legal paradigms, Dornier's case acted as an alarm bell. Ultimately, Dornier's spree was a glaring illustration of the concealed darkness that can linger unnoticed, forever altering our perception of our apparently tranquil environment.